It's so nice to be with you. I'm in Costa Rica, and my Wi-Fi has been a little crazy. So if I bump in and out, kind of bear with me, and I hope that it continues being fine. But I might need like a wave or something if I'm blah, blah, blahing and you can't hear me. Yeah. So welcome. And we are going to talk this week. We're turning the corner a little bit to really reflect back on self-care and the power and the need for self-care and caring for our nervous systems in time, well, all the time, but certainly in times when, you know, we are in a space where obviously there's so much external conflict in the world. You know, there's so much information coming in so many different directions. And, you know, Meg and I were just talking about this, how we grapple so much with, you know, staying relevant and being in and privy to, you know, the most relevant and most pertinent conversations. And, you know, I don't want to use the term like politically correct, because like politically correct at this time, like what does that even mean? But, you know, really being understanding and being mindful with our languaging and you know, educating ourselves, as we said, about, you know, anti-racism work and educating ourselves and being good followers of the Black Lives Matter movement, and at the same time, when we get into these kind of spaces of like social media, where we kind of also sometimes share about, you know, this call in our community, how there's so much unrest and there's so much friction that is continuing to be perpetrated, continuing to, I think, create a really challenging environment for us to try to bridge the gap and to try to do the good work, and of, you know, fighting for and standing for equality and justice and supporting everyone in these times. You know, when just our physiology works, the way our nervous system works. So in the pitch, and we weren't getting so much information at one physiology of our system to be able to react to stress when we were under perceived
Hold tight. It looks like, hold on, Ashleigh got cut. Ashleigh got kicked off. She's going to try and get back on here in a second. I think she's going to turn the corner into the nervous system here in a moment. But I think that you know, one thing to mention here is that these times that we're facing, and part of what Ashleigh and I were talking about in terms of social media and that sort of thing, whatever it is that you are fighting for equality and really trying to dig in and do the anti-racism work, we want to make sure that it doesn't just start and end in fighting around on social media. There's a lot that needs to be done personally in our own lives and personally in our own communities, and we just want to really make sure that that it doesn't become this sort of like only this this very surface show of support on the internet, right? And you know, it's really important to see what, you know, what petitions and what movements are out there, and you can use social media in a way to like engage in that way and figure out. I use social media to figure out what the Black Lives Matter, at first, what the Black Lives Matter movement is doing here in my own community, and then you move it over to email, and then you move it into that kind of space. So just being really mindful about the consumption there, because otherwise we can kind of get paralyzed in that sort of social media land, in that social media world, and then actually end up bypassing the real work that needs to be done in our everyday lives, and not be doing, you know, the work in ourselves and our families and in our communities. So I think that that's, you know, a little bit, you know, what we wanted to talk about there in terms, or what Ashleigh and I were talking about in terms of the social media realm. Ashleigh said she's back on. I know she wanted, here she is. And so just to turn it over to her, because, you know, the social media and all of that voracious consumption triggers a space in our nervous system where we're in a fight, flight, or freeze kind of place. And what we want to make sure that we do is root ourselves in a place of self-care, so that we are able, clear, strong, and able within ourselves to engage in what it is that we need to engage in. Okay, so I see that Ashleigh's back on here. Okay. There she is. Maybe you can try it without your video, honey. Yeah, we can't hear you.
I've been back on twice and fallen off twice.
You're literally frozen on my screen with your peace fingers up and like your mouth like this. You're like, oh no. Maybe try it without your video, love.
Even.
No. Okay. Let's see here.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
There we go. I think that's a little bit better. Let's try that again. We were just, why don't you go on in and talk about the nervous system?
Can you hear me at all?
Oh, you sound really slow.
I have my video turned off.
Would it help if we turn our video off?
I have it turned off, but
now you're coming through a little bit more clearly, hon.
let me make sure you can actually hear me though, because
And she's gone. Okay, so she's gonna go try and reset her router. So ultimately, what we wanted to talk about today was how, from a state of hyper arousal, we might not be in the most integrated position to help what it is that we're working for, what it is that we're working towards, or what it is that we're working against. And so it's vitally important, yes, to get the information necessary, yes, to see what's going on in the world, and also to continue to regulate ourselves so that we can be in a place of engaged action that is sustainable and rooted in a strength that is deeper than our egos. And in this way, I feel like for myself, when I can really work with my nervous system and be able to regulate back and forth, and I don't even want to say that we're always trying to down regulate from fight, flight, or freeze to, you know, rest, digest, and grow. But we want to have resiliency in our nervous system so that we can nourish and listen and grow. I mean, part of the rest, digest, and grow side of our nervous system, this is the capacity that we have to listen, to take in new information new perspectives, new ideas, new, whatever it is that you're listening to and learning right now. We, from a fight or flight space, you can't take in that new information. But if we can get in kind of this rest, digest, and grow space, we're allowed to, we're more capable of hearing that new information and then growing and learning from it, and then we can be rooted in that space. And there are times that, like, I feel like it's perfectly, there are times that we're going to need our rise up, our sympathetic side of the nervous system to rise up and be strong in a moment, right? But so we want to be able to provide resiliency here. And really what Ashleigh and I wanted to talk about today was that, there are some really amazing tools in the, yoga tradition that help to balance the hemispheres of the brain and bring more resiliency to the nervous system. And so we really wanted to spend time this week to help you guys, work well with your nervous systems through some simple techniques that we've learned through the traditions that we've studied, that can really help your the hemispheres of your brain to balance, so that you can be in a space of more clear presence and allow your nervous system the capacity to be resilient. And what I mean by that is your nervous system to be more dynamically responsive to the moment without, taking, this whole past patterning that we have, like that's always following us around, to be more resilient and effective and wise right there in the moment. Is this a time to rest back and to listen and to learn and to grow and to just take in the world and the voices and the information around us? Or is this a moment where I'm being called to action, where I need to step forward in support of, And so, I just maybe take a moment here before we'll move into like a little meditation and a little practice to help. But how are you guys doing? What is the condition? Like if you were to articulate the condition of your nervous system right now, does it feel robust and resilient? Does it feel in a balanced sort of state? Or, where are you right now? How are you right now? And you can feel free to just, unmute yourself and let me know how you are right now and at this time. Nobody knows. Everybody's like, I don't know how I am. Yeah, Trey, you're okay. Yeah, go ahead, Trey.
Honestly, like hearing you ask it that way, I have been in a place of, I feel like there's so much to do and so much to accomplish, but at the same time, I feel like or like totally drained when I go to do something, just the gravity of what you're about to encounter. And then I feel like I haven't been getting a lot done, even in my work or creatively, not just with all the activism work that should be going on. It's just like a place of, I have so much to do, but at the same time, I can't get anything done. It's kind of an antsy feeling, but still like, all right, just stuck, I guess. Stuck energy.
I 100% hear you on that, Trey, because I'm right there with you, and like it gets overwhelming, and we get, like, for me, the word I've been using, you're using stuck, I feel paralyzed. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, and that's the fight, flight, or freeze, right? That's that side of our nervous system. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much that, hey, we've got to do in day-to-day life, your work and your music and all of that, and the anti-racism work, and there's so much. And so we get ramped up in the sympathetic side of our nervous system versus the parasympathetic. So the sympathetic is the fight, flight, or freeze side, and that's that stuck, the freeze. I feel like we all just played freeze tag, and we're like, man, I don't know where to go, so I'm just And then part of me too, in the languaging that we're using today, as far as the nervous system goes, that maybe it might be helpful for both you and I then to be able to engage our parasympathetic nervous system, so that not only can we just let everything that's come in, just like let it settle, not in a sort of like passivity kind of way, but just let it settle. Like I feel like, you know, we're all walking around in a shooken up snow globe. It's just like shaking, 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 shaking. And so we need to like take a moment to let it settle. I have no idea what's going on here. Can you guys hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Where did I freeze for a while in the middle of my
Yes,
rant?
both times you froze, and the first time we thought you were doing it on purpose.
Freeze tag.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Okay,
So,
I think it's okay to keep going now.
yeah. So did you get the shooken up snow globe analogy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's the most helpful one for me. So ultimately we can see more clearly all of the pieces that are swirling in our atmosphere right now, which we need. It's vitally important that we see those with some kind of clarity, so that we can move forward in a new way. But the other piece to that is, and I don't know if you guys heard this or I cut out, is that not only as all of the pieces surrounding us settle and sort of the inner landscape starts to settle, but then there comes this clarity of what's the first next thing? What's the first next step? Because, you know, if I hear you correctly, Trey, and then I'm also, you know, like contextualizing it too to my own experience, I'm seeing 7 million next things and I can't go anywhere. So it's like to really be able to stop and tap into the parasympathetic side of our nervous system. Then not only does the outer and inner landscape settle, but it becomes more clear what is the first next thing? What is the next first step? And how do we engage in from a place of, gosh, and I don't want this to sound wrong, but how do we engage from a place of present moment simplicity? And I get that we are dealing with a super complex world right now, but also there are things in our immediate environment, and that first next step is right there. Be it in terms of our anti-racism journey, be it in terms of our work, you know, and how we are in the world, and how those two come together. So I'm really, really, really grateful that you named that, Trey. You have such a gift with naming so well, I think, what a lot of us are feeling, you know, so thank you for that. Yeah, thank you so much. Who else? How are you guys feeling? How are you? How is your nervous system? Yeah, Karen. Hold on, let me unmute you. There you go. You got it.
Very difficult. Very, very difficult. And I feel like all the things that are happening in a collective, I feel like because we're also connected, it's just rousing up a lot of personal trauma that I felt that I might have dealt with, but now I realize I didn't, or not in a way that it's like resolved enough for me to not be triggered by things so much.
Yeah.
So it's very, and I mean, I live in Brooklyn, so it's very active here. The atmosphere is very alive, and maybe as well because I'm raising a mixed race son. So this whole racist and different colors thing, it's been in my life for so long. And first, he was born here, but then I moved to Italy, where there's so few colored people, where they're completely not used to having people of color live there. People actually thought, everybody thought I had adopted him and that I was a very lucky woman because he looked so much like me. And I got a lot of questions throughout my life because of the boy, and his father and I weren't together, so people couldn't see the immediate result. And then moving back to Brooklyn and having him grow up here, you know, the fear of him being out by himself in the evenings, it's very relevant, and it's something I live with every day, and or have been since he was old enough to go out. And it's just more present now because there's so much rioting, there's so much anger in Brooklyn, a lot of anger. And I feel I just pick up on it. So even if I try to do a lot of, you know, resets and practices that help me, it's very hard to keep that state where your nervous system feels kind of okay.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Karin. That's I can't imagine the fear that you must be feeling. I feel like there's something that's like that I want to say to that. It's like it's not necessarily too like these practices are going to help us to stay in a specific state. I mean, of course there's anger, you know, and of course there's fear, and it's less about. I mean, I feel like pacifying the fear and the anger for so long brings us to a state where there's eruption, you know. And so it's not necessarily about just we're gonna be in a specific state that's continually equanimous, you know, but rather we'll be able to meet, if we continue to regulate our nervous system well, we'll be able to meet the fear, be able to meet the anger, be able to meet all of the complexities of the emotional world and all of the complexities of both the inner and the outer world with a sense of, I don't even want to say clarity. What do I want to say? With a sense of openness. With a sense of receptivity. Yeah, I just, because otherwise it starts to become that we're using our yoga practices to kind of bypass half of the human experience, or the part of the human experience that is difficult for us. And it's not about using our yoga practice to only cultivate the things that feel a little bit more easy for us, but we use we bolster our nervous system, and we use these yoga practices to fortify us, to make us more resilient and strong to show up for whatever is showing up for us, and both inside and outside in the world, so that we can meet the moment as it is without trying to make it a different way. And from there, we can engage in a different kind of way. You know, does that make sense? I mean, it's because otherwise we will be using our energy to pacify the moment or we'll be using our energy to battle the moment itself, battle the experience itself, versus being able to go into the experience and get to the root of it and use our precious wisdom and energy to get to the root of things. Does that make sense to you guys? It's a totally different way of engagement. It feels subtle as I'm saying it, but it's a totally different way to engage. So versus battling the anger, how do we allow ourselves to open up to the anger within and around us and get to understand it more completely? What is at the root of that anger? What is at the root of that fear? You know, and to keep going and keep going, and to have the resiliency and the courage and the curiosity and the compassion for ourselves and each other enough to keep going and going and going. Because when we can get to the root of it, that is where things will change. That is where we will engage in a completely different way, and things will have the capacity to change. So, you know, so we're, just to be really clear, we're not using these practices to pacify ourselves to try to get the experience to be something other, or inside and outside. We're making ourselves more robust so that we can engage in that conversation of curiosity in the moment, versus just going into a triggered state of I'm going to fight, or I'm going to freeze, or I'm going to run. Right? We're going in from a more resilient kind of place, where we have the capacity to be there for our own fear and our children's fear, and for the collective fear in a different way. Yeah. Okay, Jamie has something that she wants to say. Let's unmute you, Jamie. Hi, honey.
Hi, I'm trying to put the video. Give me a second.
Okay.
Here, yeah.
There you are.
Yes. I was wondering right now that you mentioned this openness. It kind of remind me, I don't know if it's helpful or not, or if it's relevant, but it might. I mean, it kind of reminds me what you're saying, more like, in a way, last year I went through a very similar process, I guess, that now it's going in a more macro level around everywhere. And it kind of feels like the grieving process, you know, or your words sounded me very much like we're all kind of grieving a way of life, probably before like the life before the pandemic and everything. You know, we all have lost family, jobs, a lifestyle, and we're also kind of grieving, you know, that process when we can be very reactive sometimes, and sometimes we can feel very powerless, and at the same time it's like you're not know where you're standing, you know, like things are shifting very, and at the same time you can't run away from it, you know, you just have to let things go their own pace, you know. And sometimes the practice, like you say, it doesn't make you shift to another state, because the grieving process, you have to go through it either way, you know. There's no way you can hide or run away from the feelings or the thoughts or the process itself. It just makes you feel like more patient to it, or more embracing to it, and just know that it's a process and you're gonna have to go through it. You know, it kind of reminds me more or less what you were saying. So I don't know if it relates to that state of grieving, you know, that you can't make it faster. You just have to go out at its own pace, whether you like it or not, you know, and it goes in kind of stages, you know. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but it sounded very much what you were saying to that. And I don't know if it So just wanted to share that because it kind of clicked.
Thank you, Jamie. No, it's beautifully put, and such wise people on this in this community. Is why I love you so much. I listen and I learn so much from you guys. And Jamie, I hear you on the grieving thing. I mean, there's so much to grieve, and we're not allowed to grieve in our society. I mean, like to a big degree, it's people are like, oh, it's not okay to feel what you feel, and it's not okay to cry, and it's not okay to, just in general as a society, it's kind of been like that for a while. I think it's Judith Lasseter that it says we're desperately undergrieved society. I mean, and to the point where, but of course, I mean, we're grieving, and then there's a deep sadness too. I mean, to grieve not only, and this is a big process of grief, to grieve not only, what was the life before pandemic, and just, now we come into this place of pandemic where we're stopping, we're recognizing the things that aren't working. And then, to wake up to, for some people, maybe even the first time, of not just where we've come as a society, but who we are as a society, to understand in a really complete way how we are an oppressive society. If that doesn't break your heart and make you sad and make you just desperately sad and angry and all of those things, something's wrong, right? I want to share with you, I pulled this out, hold on, I'm going to share with you a little passage. Yes, this is a passage that was written by a man named Matt Licata, and I feel like it just kind of speaks to this. And maybe I'll read both of the passages. We'll just see here. But he writes this: "You wondered if as you healed, if as you awakened, you would feel less. But you are seeing that love continues to ask you to feel more. There was an idea that as your heart opened, you would be less vulnerable, less naked, and less exposed. But you are more raw and tender now than you have ever been. You wondered if as you transformed and stepped fully into the here and now, you would be more detached, not care quite so much, and rest as the witness of your life from beyond it all. But alas, you care so much, you are burning up inside. You know that things will never be the same. But you still don't know what is coming next, or even where you are, or what is truly being asked of you. This unknowing, groundless ground is your home now, and the intelligence and creativity here can feel almost unbearable. You are being guided by the unseen, the unheard, and the unknown. But this guidance is occurring outside the dense environment of the mind. You are unable any longer to find any sort of reference point from which to orient. Look carefully and stay very close, for this is a sacred disorientation. The colors, the fragrances, and the sounds of the phenomenal world, it is almost too much. The purples, the blues, the rose, and the bird song, they have arrived from the other world. It feels like if you allowed the beloved fully inside, that you would fall to the ground in pure astonishment. Yet you long for this to fill you. And as you look up into the morning sky or into the vastness of dusk, you can't help but notice that things are colored by a certain tinge of sadness. But this is not the sadness of the mind where something is missing. It is a sadness which is pouring out of your own overflowing heart. This sadness is your only yoga now. You are willing to give your heart to others and to this world, for you are seeing that this is why you have come here. Somehow, by some outrageous grace, the dream of postponement has come to an end. You are here now." And this was written many years ago. But just ask that invite you really to acknowledge all that you're feeling. And then to continue to engage the practices and the processes of meditation and that sort of thing, not to numb yourself out of these things, but to become more open and available to the deep sadness and to the loss and to the grief and to the realization of who it is and where it is that we are as a people. That is really horrifying, and at the same time it's also really beautiful too. There's a lot of beauty also happening in the world. So as not to get consumed by, again, only one side of the equation, right? There's we can't also be blissing out and using our practices to only cultivate these states, but we also don't want to only be, consumed by the anger and the sadness. We want to have this resiliency to see it all, so that we can immerse into the things that are hard and emerge both, as individuals and as a collective into something different. But full immersion is the only way, like Jamie was saying. It's that's the way through. There's no way around it. We recognize we've been trying to get around it for a long time. All of the difficult things for a long time. And this is where we are, because you can't go around it. You can't numb it away. I mean, you can, but it doesn't mean it goes away. I mean, it's kind of like, I shouldn't even say this laughing, like our president was saying that we should just stop testing, because then, ta-da, coronavirus fixed. But that's kind of what we're doing. If we're just saying, like, we're just listening and trying to say only these states, we're like, well, if I don't acknowledge those other states, well then great, problem solved, they don't exist. And they do. And the only way is to test it and to go into it and to see it and to understand it and to recognize where it comes from and to get curious and to let it get messy and, to know that, it's gonna be a wild ride, and we're in it together. And you're not alone. We're not alone. I mean, I'm just gonna name, as awful as it is to hear you guys say that you're having a little bit of a hard time, a little bit of my heart exhales, because I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one. I don't want you guys to be having a hard time. Don't get me wrong, but part of me is like, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one, that's wondering what to do with the anger, and that's afraid for our world, and and that's also paralyzed and spinning, and and sad and grieving and all of these things. It's just I don't know, anybody else, does it make your heart feel a little bit at ease to know that you're not alone in this struggle? And so it's gonna take resilience in our nervous systems, so that we can be there for ourselves and be there for each other in the hard stuff. And also sometimes to remember the beauty too. Sometimes it takes community. That's why I love this community so much, so that we can all reflect to each other what is good and what is hard, and name it all as human, and own it all as our own, and then also claim it as holy. Okay. So does anybody else have anything they want to throw into the mix? I think we'll end with a meditation today. So does anybody have anything else that they want to add or share right now? Any insights, inspirations, anything? Sophia, there you are, love.
Hi.
Hi, honey.
I'm sorry, because I'm not an English native speaker, so sometimes I'm a little bit afraid that you don't understand me, but I got the courage to do it finally today. So I don't know, when coronavirus started, I keep thinking that we were been given the time to think about the world, to think about our lives, to think about us as a whole, because all the world was stopped at the same time with the same question for the first time in a lot of time. So like think from Second World War or something like that. So we had this big problem in our hands that we have to resolve. And then as time went by, I think that we were starting to be distracted with thematics that are very important, but that I can't see how can we bring some good and love to the world with so much anger. I don't know. I wish that has a big community like humanity, we could bring peace to the world with peace, you know, not with so much anger, you know. Of course, we are all stopped and we are all in standby, but I think we forgot the bigger picture that Earth is dying, and with no planet, we have no food, we have nowhere to live. If global warming keeps continuing like it is, I live in an area in Portugal. I left the city 2 years ago. I moved to the countryside. And in these 2 years in the countryside, we passed from, in degrees, I don't know the measure, but in my degrees, like we measure here in Portugal, we passed through from 32 to 38 to 42 in 3 years of top heating. So, of course, we have to think about equality. That's for sure we are one. That shouldn't be a thematic at all, because we are humans. So, and I think we are all forgetting the big picture, that our planet is dying and it's getting warm and warm, and we are all a little bit distracted and a little bit like tired, and not being able to do nothing about that because nobody speaks about it anymore. So yeah, it's that. And I wish that we could do love with love. I wish that our world and our human race could get together and stop fighting and bringing more love to the planet, because I think that's the only way. And I get really sad and disappointed that in the end of Corona we have to still be talking about thematics that shouldn't be a question. And it's that. I wish that we could bring more love, with love, not with so much tension and fighting on the streets and people hurting each other. So yeah, it's that.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. And your English is wonderful. You did a great job with your English. I don't know what you're talking about. Your English was really good. And I really hear your want for a harmonious planet. I really hear your desire for the reality to be one of love and equality. And we're not there on either front. And so, you know, it's really important, and part of what Ashleigh and I were talking about is it's really good to be for something. We are for being more harmonious with our planet. We're really for equality and love and unity amongst all people. And yet that's not where we are. And so we have to hold that as the highest and be willing also to stand up for that and stand up to the ways in the world in which that isn't working. And I would be willing to guarantee all of us that the root of love right now is through the anger that we're seeing. If we bring our resiliency and our capacity for love to the anger that we're seeing, it's going to allow us a curiosity that I can't guarantee anything, but I will almost guarantee you the root of that anger that people are feeling is one of love, whether love not experienced. People are angry because they haven't experienced that love. They haven't experienced that sense of unity. Has been experiencing a sense of oppression instead for a really long time. And so it, you know, so it can rise up. But if we can take the strength of our love into the heart of the anger, that's the, you know, it's kind of what Jamie was saying, that's the way through back to this way of things that we're for. But we have to be able to listen to the anger. We have to be able to listen to the fear. We have to be able to understand, like, just like you're saying, where we're out of alignment with that want for us to be more in harmony with the planet. Where are we missing the mark as a society, and even personally in the unity and equality? I mean, we can be for those things, and we're going to take the fullness of our love to the fight for that. And let's be clear, love is strong, and love says no. Love says not here, not today, not with this person that's in front of my face, not with me, not, you know, love is not the Hallmark love that's easy. You know, this is what we're being called into, because as you so gracefully put, Sophia, we want this to be the case, and it is not the reality. So this is the hard love that needs to show up and lean into the anger instead of away.
Okay.
You know, does that make sense? And I really love that you put it there, because that's so important. We need to know what it is that we're longing for. We want so bad for everyone to feel that love, to feel equal, to feel whole. We want so bad for our planet to feel that love, and yet we're not there. And so it's going to take this resilience, you know, that we're talking about. It's going to take a strength and a love that is beyond that which is easy, because things have to change on a big level for those things to be so. You know, that's, and the end of it, you know, might not happen in our lifetime, but we're going to lean in and do what we can. We have to become resilient and robust here, so that we can go in to the anger without getting lost in it. You know what I mean by that? And not lost in, so that we can get to the root of the anger. We can get to the base need, and then things start to change. We can start to see how our systems don't support equality for all, and don't support the health of our environment. We can start to really make some different choices, better choices. Yeah, so I'm grateful that you brought that up, and I feel like we want to hold this vision, but then we have to rise to the occasion again and again and again and again and again to make it so. And so that's the thing, we hold the vision and we rise to the occasion, and whatever the occasion is in the moment. And for, you know, for Trey and I, who might be spinning a little bit and feeling a little bit paralyzed, for me, the helpful thing is to be like, what is the occasion here in my immediate surrounding? The occasion right now is here with my daughter, and here with my daughter's school. You know what I mean? So, you know, and you know, the other thing that I just want to just briefly mention is that there is the conversation between global health and inequality. It's the same conversation too, the intersection of those two things. Marginalized populations are much more at risk of of being immediately affected by the global by global warming and by our environmental crisis. So I just want to name that as well. So they're not even two separate things. You know, it's a similar thing. So thank you for, you know.
I'm not minimizing the question of inequality, because I think, like, for me, it's the first thing. We should be all one. And thank God I live in a community where I don't really feel it on a daily basis, but I understand that exists. And for me, of course, I'm not minimizing it. I'm sorry that we have to be so, that has to be a war to get there, that it has to include so many anger in the process. That's what I'm sad about, because of course it's very, very important, of course.
Yeah, no, we hear you in that, Sophia, and like that is wonderful, and thank you for re-articulating that. And that is the vision, and we hold that so dear. It's our heart's deepest longing that everyone on this earth feels, not even feels, just knows how they belong. We've got to find our way back to each other. That is our deepest longing as humans. It really is. So thank you for continuing to, you know, for articulating that. It's really, really beautiful. And, you know, so I know that we're butting up against time. And so let's do this. How would you guys like next week if we did a practice week, where we were just doing some practices, like some meditation practices, perhaps even like a little yoga nidra practice, something like that? How does that feel okay to you guys, that you guys have some tools and some resources to really, like, we were going to give a couple today, but then I think this conversation is also super important, and it really, really, so grateful for all of you guys chiming in. So let's do next week a practice week. And just so that you know that kind of what's also on the agenda, Ashleigh and I are in conversation with a few people that their work in this world. I do my own, you know, personal and communal work around anti-racism. You know, I'm working in a school and working in my family and working here, but that is not my I am not an anti-racist specialist by any stretch of the imagination, right? I am very much a follower in that, and then doing my work, right? And so Ashleigh and I are working on getting somebody here on this call here in the next month or so. Everyone's schedules are super busy. There are some amazing voices in the anti-racism arena, voices of color that we really love and respect, that we follow, and we'd like to try and bring some of those voices here to our community. So that's coming, and we're working on, you know, trying to figure out what people's schedules are, and, you know, contracts and that sort of stuff, so that we can you know, hire somebody to come and be with you guys, and that way you guys won't have to pay for it. So just so you know, like, we just want to bring that here. But what is my sort of, I guess, expertise, if you will, is, and I'm not always perfect at it myself, but what I've been studying for 25 years now are these practices. And I would love to help you guys be able to understand your own inner resource, to bring resiliency to your nervous system, so that we can hold this beautiful vision that Sophia is talking about, and be able to rise to the occasion in the way that we are each being called again and again and again and again and again. Okay, so does that sound good to you guys? Next week we'll do some practices. It'll be more practice based, and then just keep your eyes open as we announce a couple of guest speakers that we're going to be also bringing in. So I can't thank you guys enough for sharing and being here and being part of it. I think it's really important that we know that we're not alone in this, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna make this world even just the littlest bit better so that our kids and our grandkids and our grandkids are not having to fight the same battle over and over and over again. Yeah. Okay. All right. I love you all. And mwah, hugs and loves. Be well, everyone. Okay. Oh, and I'm going to be doing practice tomorrow morning at 7. So if you guys want to join on the Zoom call, I just saw Jazz and her cat there. I was like, oh, they join us for practice. I think we'll, 7 to 8 tomorrow morning. So if you guys want to join for a little yoga practice, 7 to 8, it's going to be about calming the nervous system. So you guys can join in on the Zoom link is on my webpage and on all my stuff. You can find it on my Facebook and my Instagram. Okay. All right. Love you all. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.